All right. We are coming off the most sad, depressing loss of the year. 5-point loss in overtime against the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide, who are now cutting down the nets on us in the airplane hangar they call a arena. Man, I just they say it's the hope that kills. I said I wouldn't get my hope up at all for this game. There's no way we win this thing. I'm totally gonna get blown out. I'm just watching for podcast purposes or to see what we learned. And yet here I am, depressed. We lost that game. And there's so much to talk about it too. It's just that game had a million lives in it. And some of us, me personally, tweeted out too early some celebrations, not realizing how much game we had left. And man, we had a lot of game left. Matt, how you feeling?
Um, Not thrilled with my co-host for some of the tweets that were sent out. Now, people can make fun of me and laugh at me for this, but I think for those of us who are lifers, if you've been an Auburn fan your whole life, I think everybody has an appropriate amount of paranoia. And I had a lot of paranoia when we were getting a little too excited because I know how good Alabama is and I know how things go for a team like Alabama on the road. And ultimately, there's ref stuff to talk about. There's some pivotal points I want us to talk about. There's a lot there. Ultimately, you've got to hold a 17-point lead with 10 minutes to go, 11 minutes to go. It's hard. It's hard against the best team in the country, potentially. But we could not get stops down the stretch, which is what we're supposed to hang our hat on. And I think our guys got worn out. By far the longest college basketball game I've ever watched, except for maybe the 6 overtime Syracuse UConn game like 10 years ago. That was a 2-hour, 45-minute basketball game. And I think, on a few of our guys who played the most minutes they've played all year, I think it showed a little bit.
Apparently, the strategy to beat Auburn, if you're in your own arena and if you go down by 10 or some sort of lead, get into a fight. Start a fight, get a little crazy. The refs will stop the game for 10 or 15 minutes and review stuff. And then by the time we all come back out, you're good to go. You can go on your 17-point run. It happened the exact same way at Texas A&M in their arena, and it was so frustrating to watch us play so well. The game come to a grinding halt, momentum all gone for the home team to come all the way back, and that happened again this game. We were up 17 points at one point, but we lost the majority of our team. We lost Jonai Broom with 7 minutes left at the same time as that fight. I don't know if we want to, I guess we might as well start there.
Yeah.
We were up 17 points. We hit a lot of threes, which was great. We're hitting a super high percentage of threes in the first half, which, man, this game or this team, shocking how different it is when we get production from the shooting guard and hitting threes. We're up 17. We knew there was some foul trouble going on. It just seemed like we kept collecting a lot of fouls. We could talk about if this team is just foul happy or it's just part of being in the SEC. When you're away, you're going to get fouls on you. There was an insane moment where Jonai Broom already had 4 fouls on him. They go up for a rebound. They're fighting for the ball. Jonai Broom's got his hand on the ball. Other guy's got his hand on the ball. Jonai gets thrown into the out of bounds for the most part. Gets the ball thrown at him afterwards, which you can debate. If you're a Bama fan, you say, oh, he was trying to throw it off him going out of bounds. As Auburn fans, it felt a little late, felt a little aggressive, and that stopped the game. Their Wendell came over to kind of help up Broom, but ran into some of the Bama players. They started talking smack. Wendell shouldn't talk smack, but then the other guy hit him in the hands and acted a little crazy. Their guys came off the bench. If you're a Bama fan, you say, oh, they were celebrating, but at least 2 guys cross half court line very aggressively. And this Bama team has a history. You don't know what's coming off that bench. So it came off the bench pass after. I took 10 plus minutes for the refs to figure out what's happening. The big story on the announcers was that 2 guys from Bama got kicked off for the game, Bediako and some nobody. But the real issue was Jonai Broom with 7 minutes left in the half, fouled out. And it was huge down the stretch. It wasn't just momentum, but man, there was a whistle every single time Bama drove for a little bit there, 6, 7, 8 times in a row. Part of that, the refs started getting really foul happy. A lot of little weird whistles on both sides. KD got some foul calls I thought was little. Matt saying slow up, but I am on my rant. Without Broom, it's tough down there. Our guys are not that big, and as we saw down the stretch, Broom went out, Jalen Williams went out, Alan Flanagan went out, all with 5 fouls, some of them in overtime. But that's how it is when we're undersized.
It all goes back to that moment though, and I think we've got to sit there for a minute. Most people who listen to this podcast watch the game, but Alabama had a nice 8-0 run, 9-0 run where we missed a couple shots, turned it over once. They hit 3 in a row, and that's going to happen against them. And Janai goes for an offensive rebound, and their guy flies in, makes a really good play. He gets the ball from Janai. Janai's trying to hold on as he's falling out of bounds, but the Alabama guy has the ball. The Alabama guy is out of bounds. And when they cut away to commercial, I was kind of getting at first. Well, I know I don't have time to talk about the coming off the bench rule. It's stupid, and I think this is a great example of why it's so stupid. Because out of that entire situation, I saw him point at Janai Broome, the ref. I should know his name. I heckled him in college. I remember his face. He points at Janai Broome, and I realized immediately that's 5. And I don't think Jimmy Dykes knew. I don't think anybody in ESPN knew. I don't think our group text knew. And I'm not saying like good for me. I was just freaked out that entire 3-minute commercial break. And then they're reviewing for 5 minutes at the monitor to see who we're kicking out for bad. That's not important. You know why it's really not important? Because there's no technicals issued. They kicked out Bediako, who had 0 points, and some guy off their bench. So it was a terrible call. The difference in that, it goes from some people are watching thinking, oh, Auburn's up 8 and they're going to get technical free throws, right? Because the Alabama players ran on the court and like that's got to penalize them somehow, right? Nope. Not only that, it's a foul on your best center, who again played really well, and he's out of the game. And it's a 1-and-1 on the other end for their point guard, their best free throw shooter. So they cut it to 6, and we don't get anything out of that. Yeah, they lose 2 guys, but like they're not important guys. I am so frustrated by this obsession that the refs have to control. That was a 10-minute break in the game when you're losing your best player, and nothing happened from it that helped Auburn at all. And I just find that moronic. I think these guys are adults. We don't have to go to the monitor to see if somebody crossed half court. We don't have to go see if Wendell and Quinterly playing footsie with their hands counts as a technical. I'm sick of it.
They were playing patty cake, is what you're trying to get at. They were playing patty cake out there.
And everybody wants to, like, it's so soft. And you know what happens every time something like that happens? The refs tighten up and call every foul down the stretch. That's what caused what you're talking about. Broome fouled out and it got everybody out of position. But what caused it was everyone in the building, and Auburn fans, quite frankly, not that we had anything to do with it, but you know what I mean, overreacting to something that was literally nothing. The way you heard the announcers talk about that sequence, I thought somebody punched someone. Literally nothing happened. That's normal basketball stuff. Move on. Now, Auburn has to be more mentally tough to not let that beat them. But I just think, if that gets called a certain way, Auburn's up 8, 10, or 12 with the ball, depending on if there's technicals and stuff. And instead, it's 6 with 8 minutes to go. And you've just sat and you lost, one of your best players. So really frustrating. It really encapsulates the whole season for me. This is a good basketball team. I don't really care what anybody said. We can talk about how they're terrible and how all the players need to be processed and all this stuff. They just went toe-to-toe with, I think, the best team in the country and really outplayed them. They were up for 60 out of 80 minutes of regulation playing that team twice. So you can't tell me they're not good. You can't tell me the coaches don't know what they're talking about.
I think what you're feeling, you keep saying this is a good team, and you don't want to hear that it's not. And that my big thing is I think what we're seeing is we're seeing this team play as well as it can. And that's what's so frustrating. We're seeing this team play. It's 10 out of 10 capable, and they keep losing. And for me, you say that's a good team. For me, it's an indicator that we lost in the recruiting battle. We lost in the transfer portal.
But would you say that? Would you say that if Wendell hit a 10-footer at the end of regulation to beat him? Would you have said that?
I guess it would have been the only good win this year. I would have been very excited. I think Wendell not hitting is just another example of this team. Like, man, it was the same we've done all year when we've been in close games.
I know.
Who's going to take that final shot? Jalen shrinks away every time the game gets close and is a little intense. That's when Jalen turns into an absolute ghost. He played really well in the first half. He was playing really well, and then man, when that game started getting close, oh my God, Jalen might as well not been in the stadium for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
So left it. It was classic. We left it to Wendell again. How are we good? Like we know at this
Well,
point, 2 years in, don't leave these games to Wendell, man. I
yeah.
know he lucked out at Georgia last year, but it just comes down. That's what it is. And some of that was because the guys were out of the game. Maybe we would have
But
worked something to
again,
Broom or something, but we just don't have the guards. We don't have the people to do it.
We just, I know it's tempting. We all like to do the whole sweeping narrative thing. I just think Wendell kept us in the game, hit some daggers late.
But that's one of the nice parts about college basketball and basketball in general. I think in the NBA, it gets there's way too many games. But in college basketball, I think it's a pretty good amount of games, honestly, that by the end of a conference season, the best team in that conference is going to win the conference, like 90% of the time. And I think we've seen, like, we only have one game left in the SEC, probably 2 or 3 games left in the entire season. We've seen the evidence. Like, we can't keep saying, like you said earlier,
you're right.
you got to win. You can't go up 17 and then lose. It's just, we've seen it over and over again, to where we have to assume that this is the team. This team does not have the depth to do it. It's going to have these humongous droughts that don't get made up by any of our runs. And it's just how it all comes down to guard play, I think, for the most part, that we don't have it. And that you can't survive in modern day college basketball without some guard play.
Well, we'll talk about the players, but I mean, we had guys. The hard part about this, if you kind of are bought in with the program and the players, I don't know how you could watch the game and know who we are. Like you said, I think we know who we are really well as fans. I think you're right. That's a really good point. And I don't know how you could watch Chris Moore. How many minutes did he play? Chris Moore ends up playing 25 minutes, which is got to be a season high or close to it, maybe 4.
If you got the box score.
Yeah, let's share it. Sorry, I forgot to share it. I'm flustered.
I know no one watches the YouTube channel because we
Never
can
know.
see that. But
up and down the roster, just guys just battling, man. KD put up 21. He wanted it when nobody else did. I know we've legislated KD to death. Trey Donaldson was incredible in the first half in that spot.
The heart is there across the team. This has been a down season, and for them to come back that hard after that depressing Kentucky game, right. Hey, the heart is there. I've never questioned the heart of this team and the want to of this team.
Well, I have
the skill level.
I have, and I continue to just be nervous all year. I've been nervous. Like, eventually, you keep coming back and getting punched in the gut and the face, and how many times do you keep showing back up? And they clearly, again, and this just gets taken for granted, but that's where you love having Bruce Pearl as your coach, because these are the kind of games that he can steal for you. And he just about did today. And like you're in your own words, a game you tried to mentally just say there is no way that this team can go in there and win. I'm not like that, but I was feeling like that today. And then to see those guys, like, I'm not trying to be all like weird emotional. It was just cool to see the battle and the fight, and even late, right? Like, how many times towards the end of that game and then in overtime when we had literal, like, weirdest thing ever, you're like, oh, wait, we have the ball down 2 with a chance to win in Tuscaloosa with Lior at power forward and Chris Moore at center. And, like, anyway, I think we do. I think before we get too deep into all the bad, incredible performance. Those 2 Alabama games, I just think our coaches did a great job and our players did a great job. I think Alabama's been beat people by 40 or 50, not just once. Like, they're really good, and I hate it. I hate it more than anybody. We had a chance. If we had held this lead, Jackson, they would have had to beat A&M in A&M to win outright championship. We had a chance to keep them from it, to not let them cut down nets. They hadn't lost at home all year. We had all this glory in front of us, and we just couldn't hold the lead and couldn't finish it.
Man, sometimes you just got to guard your own. Sounds. Sometimes you can't. It's the hope that kills, And I can't believe I got my hope up again. I want to go back real quick. You said you hate the whole bench thing. Coming off the bench gets you an automatic toss out of the game. I hard disagree on that. We don't have to talk about it super far. I think it's one of the better rules we have, honestly, because it's black and white. And I think I've seen too many times like this, like edging of like intensity of, oh, they come off the bench a little bit. They could this, by putting that black and white rule, like, hey, don't come off the bench or you're out. I think we've all seen
that's
these
not the
games where
rule.
like Kentucky comes off or whatever before this rule came out. Some teams could get away with a little more and a little more, and it gets so frustrating as a fan to be like, well, they got away with this. They got away with that. Oh, because they're at home and they came out like referee like that. You didn't do a thing, but we were the way to you, whatever. So I think I like the black and white of like, if there's something getting frisky out in the court and you come off the bench, you're getting gone. And I love that. And you rarely see it now. You used to see it a lot. It used to be really intense. There used to be a lot of brawls in basketball in general. There
That
was
was
like
kind
a
of
year
fun,
there.
wasn't it?
It kind of was fun.
I mean, like,
there's a great documentary, Malice of the Palace, on ESPN, and I go back and watch that sometimes. These college basketball brawls and like my hometown, Montgomery, Alabama. I'm sure there's plenty of Montgomery people that listen to this. We had a lot of brawls. It was like 2007 or 8 or 9 or something like that. For some reason, there was a lot of brawls going around and a lot in basketball. So, anyways, this cut that out, and it's a good thing for the sport. I know we loved our little brawls, but it's not cool. Anyways, that's a whole long thing about that.
Other than Ron Artest, if you go watch basketball fights, they're never really good fights. Nobody ever.
I've watched some good ones. I've watched some intense ones. There was one in Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay, well, we're talking at an actual level. We're not talking about high school here.
I'm gonna find some. I'm gonna post some on our socials. But there was and for you Montgomery people, this is a deep cut, and we don't usually do this kind of thing on the podcast. We usually stick to our topics pretty much, but Carver played some other school in Alabama State University's arena, and the brawl was an all-timer. There's nothing like when the brawl happens on the court and the fans get involved and it breaks out in the fans. It's like I don't know, it's like watching a documentary. You got to go back and watch. It's on YouTube. Anyways, that's a whole long thing. What I want to say is usually we pick key stats of why we lost, and I have some key stats. We can go through them, but the big key stat for me, and I have the mic. My mic is off the stand. This has got me, man. I am like in my feels right now. But the key stats for me: Jonai Broom, 5 fouls; Jalen Williams, 5 fouls; Alan Flanagan, 5 fouls; Dylan Cardwell, 4, and an ankle injury to take him out of the game. And that's why we ended up with the weirdest lineup ever to finish the game. I think it was Wendell, KD, Lior, Chris Moore. And who else was out? How did we have anybody else even out there? Was Zepp out there?
No.
What was that final lineup? It was Wendell,
Trey, Wendell, KD, Lior, and Chris Moore.
And that's why we couldn't rebound in the last couple minutes.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It also reminded me, I mean, you could say, oh, well, those other guys were on the bench or whatever. It just reminded me again that, like, man, we just missing some of that depth. As much as we talked about depth earlier in the year, like you would have thought the guy like Stretch just did not work out. We were joking in the text that here's Johan time. Johan couldn't even stay on the floor the whole year, which you can argue, and Ben would argue up and down with you, and I would too a little bit, but Johan he was so out of it that by this time this game came around, they just couldn't even play him. It's just a shame.
Well, but I would say on the flip side, this is what Auburn's capable of when its bench plays. I mean, they, typically on the road against a good team, that's where the bench kind of struggles a little more compared to being at home. And I thought Trey was great. He had one bad turnover, but I thought Trey was awesome. I thought Chris Moore was awesome in his role, and he played 3 different positions. I thought Lior came in and hit a shot and got a couple rebounds. I just felt like I thought Dylan had some really good moments. Really concerned about Dylan too. That's not what we needed coming into some big games. We're out of time. If that's a rolled ankle like it looked like, and even if there's no structural damage, that's gonna be tough.
It's hard to even. I know if we win this next game, it's coming down to the tournament, and that's huge for program history. It just feels so depressing right now to even be like,
nah.
Oh, we gotta get Dylan back for next year. You're like, do we really? We suck.
We do. I refuse to do that. I mean, people are going to do that. People have been doing that on message boards for weeks. I don't have much sympathy for that attitude, to be honest. I sat through all that stuff. I know you did too for a lot of it, but there are way worse.
We're spoiled.
We are so spoiled.
You just wish it's just so much more fun to come in as the underdog, the not expecting anything team, and to come out. We're learning as a fan base the other way around, that like the bad part is we weren't even expecting this year to be that great, man. We came in saying like, hey man, if we make the tournament, that's good. If we just kind of stick around, that's good.
So
we've kind of done that. It's kind of done that. It's just been, I think what the big deal is, honestly, is that the SEC is down. And we know that. And we know
would,
how susceptible all these teams were playing. If Alabama and Tennessee and Kentucky and Arkansas were all like jockeying around the top 10, like we kind of thought they were going to be, and we didn't, we kind of stayed outside of that. We went in and I talked about, okay, well, it was a really hard SEC. What were we going to do? You know, they had some really good teams. The only good team in this league, I think, is Alabama. I know Kentucky's turned it around and Tennessee has been
Tennessee's in
bobbing
the top
around,
10
but
nationally.
yeah, I just know that like I feel like they're very susceptible. So it just kind of is annoying that like we
Well,
could have done something.
there's a chance. I don't know if the SEC's ever gotten this many teams in. Potentially, we have to see how it plays out. But if they get 8 teams in, I don't know if the SEC's ever gotten that many in the tournament. So
I guess it's bad at the top. I mean,
maybe
Alabama's really good, but the
I
rest
just
of
think you refuse to acknowledge how good Tennessee and Alabama are. I mean,
maybe
all
I
year.
do acknowledge. I don't acknowledge Tennessee. I
Fine.
will finally acknowledge Alabama. Man, they've done it all year. They're just super good, and it's super annoying. And it shows another one. You know, looking down these stats, we're arguing that like, oh, look how close we were. This is a good team. I would say both Alabama games we played this year were an anomaly for our team. We shot 60% from 3 in the whole game. It was one thing when we were shooting like 5 of 6 to start the half. I thought, okay, that's, you know, we're going to come back to our regular 3-point shooting in the second half. And we kind of did, but we still hit a decent amount. I mean, we still, for the whole game, was at 60%, and they shot 26 in their own house. That, I'd love to say that's like, oh, we fought really hard.
That's how you get a 17-point lead, though. I mean, look, if you're going to say fouls, yeah, it's super important that a lot of our guys fouled out, especially if a game's going to go to overtime. But
you going turnovers?
Yeah. I think, we forced 14, which is really good to see. Our defense has become a little back to normal for me, a little more disruptive. In addition to playing solid defense. Yeah, 18 was just too much. There were 10 in the first half when we had a lot of opportunities in the first half to stretch it out even more. But man, I hate to even say that though, because I was so impressed. Alabama came out and hit their first, 5 shots, something like that in the second half, and really punched us and got it tied, I think. And then we were up by more at the first TV timeout than we were at half. Like, we responded so well. We built the biggest lead of the game at 17, and then it just slowly started to fall apart. And then, we
turned the ball over a lot while we were building that lead. Even it was super sloppy, but somehow we were turning them over too. And then it was crazy sloppy. So that's why I almost didn't want to pick turnovers, just because even though that number's crazy with 18, it just felt like, man, a big chunk of those were while we were still killing them. So it didn't really matter as much. It was really that down the stretch, all those fouls that really killed us.
Yeah. 9 turnovers in the first 10 minutes for us. That was the part that was bad. And we were still winning. But again, you always talk about the opportunities of like, oh man, you're up 2 or you're up 3. We could be, and against a team like this.
Shoot 60% from 3 and don't turn the ball over that many times and see what would happen. Maybe that's a 25-point lead that we don't lose.
Right. And we wouldn't. And, there's some people I really respect in Auburn Twitter that have been on this. It sounds stupid, but if you're a big metrics guy, there is a luck metric. And this is one of the unluckiest teams in America, the Auburn Tigers, in terms of how they play each possession, how they value each possession, how they, like, all the things that go into basketball. If you just take the time and score out, our record should be significantly better than it is. And that's a direct result of all these close games that, you could say it's a flaw and it's a Wendell thing and it's a recruiting thing maybe, but another team that was really bad in the luck metric, I'm not making this comparison, but was that Final Four team. How we always talk about how they were 7-7 in the league and on the bubble. They lost a bunch of close games.
I actually really like that luck metric. I like looking at it sometimes. Usually, I think like anything past top 10 on either one gets a little dubious, but usually those top teams have some really good examples of like, man, this could be a completely different year. And sometimes it works out really well for them. They'll be on that bad luck metric, like you said, the Final Four team, and they'll be in the top 5 bad luck, go kind of limping into the March Madness, and that's when it turns around because it's not real. It's like, and some of that can be bad clutchness. Your bad clutch team, you have it like us, don't have a guy that can hit a shot at the end of a game. Like we're putting in Wendell's hand every single time. Another stat to also I want to know how the luck metrics put together a bit. Some of it's like, okay, so you lost close games and you won close games. That's just where it got. It's got some extra in it, right? It's got some
it's who you played, it's where you played them, and it's looking more, again, taking score, opponent, all that away, and just like how well do you play basketball. And then what should your record be based on?
Does it take percentages of like field goal percentage, different things like that
Yeah.
into it?
Yeah,
Shot.
of course.
Does it get as deep as taking that good shots? Like I don't know how they tell what's a good shot, but I know that's a metric some people do.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a hard one. There are systems, but that's a tough one.
Here's the stat for Ben. Ben was real adamant about this stat, and I'm not sure. I don't know. It's still a big deal for me because I love the block party. Alabama 5 blocks, Auburn 0 blocks. Man, I think we need to look at our stats this year and see how far back it's been since we had a 0 block game. I don't know if you have any. I don't think I'll tell me, but I wasn't looking for that because we just got so used to having like minimum 3 blocks a game, pretty much, and then usually a lot more than that. But man, yeah, I mean, it's another showing of just how it was down the stretch. I mean, some of those could have been blocks that got fouls by the refs because it was a whistle every single time they went down there. But part of that's Broom being out 7 minutes. Part of that's them being longer than us, but it's another indicator that a team's longer than us like that. Another interesting stat that I would say is an anomaly, and it's kind of, it's a super annoying to me, and it's happened 2 Bama games in a row, and I've already said it once before, but we play 10 out of 10 good for our team. And we still lose. And that's what kills me when me and Matt and Ben and Storman on text message have gotten some big arguments about recruiting and stuff. That's what kills me. And what I talked about before the season started, that like our ceiling is just not there, that we can play 10 out of 10. We can scout the best we can. We have a great game plan and just not have the horses. This game, for the bench points, we had 34, Bama had 29, and that's an anomaly for us. We have not had a better bench points in a while.
I'm going to push back on that because you know what we did last year when we allegedly, well, first of all, we swept Alabama last year.
Woo. Reigning SEC champs. Wait, maybe not. Can we say that still?
Not anymore. It's over. But I just want to be clear. Alabama probably would have said similar things last year in that year against us.
That they played the best game they could have played and still lost.
Well, not necessarily that, but just like, man, Auburn, look at Auburn. Auburn's getting all these elite. Got Jabari Smith. They got this transfer, Walker Kessler. Oh my God.
It feels very much like their year feels very much like our years was last year. It's
the same year.
And the only difference is Jabari Smith was a great guy. And their star.
That is true.
Brought a gun to a murder.
It does hurt a little more this game with that as a backdrop. I think it says a lot about this game for me that I really didn't even think about that. It was such a good basketball game.
Well, I said that right at the beginning. They did not mention right at the beginning, and then right at the first commercial. It's so interesting. I work in the media world. It's interesting to like see what they want to put together as like their company statement on the issue, and clearly decide like what we're gonna do is you announcers don't have to say anything. Don't talk. Just talk about the game. We're gonna run approved by ESPN 30-second little mark there that says the story, and then after that we can move on and no one's going to talk about it, and it sucks. It needs to be talked about more. Jackson. That is what they did. That's what they're doing. Line was, you guys don't have to talk about it. It's tough to talk about. We are going to run a little segment so that we can say we talked about it, and that's going to be it. And we'll see if they continue that through March Madness. I'll be really interested.
But on the game, yeah. But literally everywhere. I mean, this hasn't gone anywhere. I don't know. I think you're crazy if you think that.
No, it's fine. They're still talking about it. It's definitely, gone backwards a little bit. People, it's how the news cycle goes. It's not on the tip of people's tongue. It will be if he gets named Freshman of the Year, SEC Player of the Year, and all these things. But it's just for me, it's just very interesting to see the game plan for this kind of touchy subject.
Yeah. I mean, but I also, as this is probably where we differ a little bit in terms of like, I want to watch basketball games. Like I even if it was, I don't think you have to mention it every.
Me too.
Half.
Suspend them, and we wouldn't have to talk about any of this.
Well, yeah, like that. I mean that's on Alabama. Like I'm not gonna complain about it.
But that we've learned so much. These powerful places, you have to hold them to account. You have to keep yelling at them for them to do anything. They will ignore things like this if you don't say anything about it.
But you can watch ESPN all day outside of that, and that's literally all they're talking about. I mean, it's all over the place. Now, yeah, they're going to have a game plan.
I guess I just don't watch ESPN all day.
Well, and good. I don't either, but it's there.
You're sure they're saying that all day? I'm pretty sure they're talking about Tom Brady and LeBron James and never mentioning college basketball.
Well, okay, but I'm talking about when they're talking. I mean, like I've seen it everywhere, and I don't watch things outside of live sports. Like I see it all the time on TVs everywhere I'm at. Like I don't have that.
Are you talking about that gym watch? feel like that's the only time I ever see like regular talking heads ESPN is if I'm on the treadmill at the gym.
Restaurants, bars, like
Doctors waiting
like,
rooms.
I mean, I don't know. I just think it's being covered. I think everybody's really mad about it. And every time they accomplish something like they did tonight, it's going to be brought up again. Like, and that's the bed they've made because of the way they handled it. Everybody at my workplace is still talking about it. And it's weeks later. And most of these people don't even care about college basketball. So I think from your perspective, it is like, it's interesting to see how they do the broadcast, right? Because that's when the most eyes are on it.
I mean, the meetings that were had, yeah, for me, it's just the interesting, like, how are we going to cover this? How is this supposed to be talked about? And this game feels very much like probably what they're going to do until the end of the SEC tournament. And then we'll see what CBS does on March Madness.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll see where it goes.
Chuck will say something for sure.
I hope so. Anyway, just super frustrating to me. But I mean, look, we out rebounded them. Now they miss more shots than us. That's part of it. We outshot them barely. We outshot them from 3 free throws. You can point to a little bit, but honestly, I think we lost the game by not being able to get stops and then not being able to adapt after the silly.
I mean, hey, there's my adaptation. We have the MAT system that I got in trouble for tweeting about, which we were up 17 with 12 minutes left, which is, a rarity that gets broken out of. And really, it's not really a system like once you've crossed it, you can't come back. It's just something to watch. Something to watch. See if you feel
and
like
we let them back in. We let them back in way too fast. And that's
and the further out you are too, the more likely that you can pull it off. And that's why we had the system. If you're at 17 points, 17 minutes, you're good.
West Virginia game.
But we talked about it several times, and maybe this one's not quite my usual, but actually it kind of is an example of the usual. The refs, when they do it way too often in college basketball, they call the game one way. The first couple of minutes, you figure out how the refs are calling, and at some point something happens and they decide they have to call the game differently, and whichever team adapts first usually gets like a 10-point run. And Alabama adapted first, and it's been like that all year. The other teams have adapted first. We have at times adapted first, but it feels like we've gotten burnt more than anything.
Well, look, it's easier to adapt, and this is where I do agree with you. I think it's not coincidence that we seem to get punished when the whistles get tight. I know some people have said maybe it helps us. I don't think it helps us at all. I think we are not a team with the big guards yet. We've got some coming in soon in a year or two, but like we don't have those bigger downhill driving guards. And when the game tightens up, and it's very frustrating for me because that shouldn't matter, but you watch enough basketball, it does matter. Like, people, I was perplexed tonight. The whole game, they were allowed to just attack Wendell and never get called. I think they got called for 1 foul on the perimeter against Wendell, and it was the entire game. Credit to their defenders. They were making it tough on him. They clearly have some things they like to do to him to get him off his game. But it's something like you can't just constantly be pushed, like having your hands on him. And for whatever reason, he's not getting those calls. We know why KD sometimes doesn't get them because he goes in out of control. And who else is Zep? I mean, Flan tries, but then he gets called for a charge. Like,
who's Zep?
Yeah, who is Zep? He didn't.
Who is that? Is he still on the team? I thought he left like after out of conference.
Well, he got.
I'm being a little sassy today. I'm on my second Redmont round bound refresher here, so I'm feeling a little sassy. I'm feeling a little depressed.
He got benched for KD because KD played so well today. He really did. So I don't even remember what I was talking about, but the whistles changing. And again, I think that's where we have to be careful too, because I want us to play with an edge and I want our guys to be competitive and talk a little bit, like be confident. But man, I feel like that's the 3rd or 4th time this year. Every time we didn't really do anything in this situation. I'm not blaming the guys, but like anytime people freak out about something, we got to protect the players and we've got to review this.
Got to get the game under control. These refs got to get it under control.
Like, why? It was a great basketball game. People were gushing about how good it, like there was, and I just think it's, and that's why.
Do you feel like, maybe I would love to talk on a ref sometime. Let us know if you want to talk a ref or you have any connection with the ref. I don't know if they do podcasts, but I'd love to hear about it and just learn something. I wonder how much of it is subliminal versus them getting in a huddle and being like, hey, it's getting a little crazy out there. Let's cool the heads down. Like they maybe don't say the words, get them under control or whatever, but like you wonder how much is subliminal and how much is like they know as part of their career, when things get a little out of hand, we need to start blowing whistles. If that's like, which, what is it? Is it subliminal because it got crazy, or actually a game plan of like, hey guy, yeah, let's make sure it doesn't get too crazy. Next time we see a push, next time, whatever, blow the whistle,
I don't think it happens quite like that, but I do think
it might be a Bruce Pearl situation where we ask the ref about that and they go, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. We just keep going. I'm like, no, you don't.
And again, I think that's where these bigger, if you watch college basketball, it's the hardest sport to officiate. There's going to be bad calls every game, no matter what, whether you win or lose. It's just part of it. The thing that drives me nuts, as you can probably tell, is these physical events that we have to legislate. Like these are 13-year-olds that are going to, look, if there's an all-out brawl in the SEC, maybe we can talk about it. I've been watching SEC basketball my whole life, and I'm trying to remember any time.
Did you hear something on a Kentucky one today? Was there one in the Kentucky game?
That was women. That was women.
Oh,
so I think it was women. I'm pretty sure. It doesn't help us. It was terrible timing, and I'm gonna be salty for a long time that Janai Broome got called for a fifth foul while sitting on the ground while the Alabama player had the ball out of bounds. And then they get free throws and they came on the court. They got the ball and they got free throws. We got nothing. And we allowed that to help frame the game. But it's super indicative of this weird year we've been in. We won so many close games last year, and it just feels like we're getting paid back even more than what we got last year with those close wins, with these close losses.
What I'm taking out of this is that Matt is pro brawl. He wants the brawls back. If you've ever watched NFL Blitz or NBA Jam, he wants some wilding out there. He wants NHL fight style. As long as you're holding the jersey, you're good to go.
Just imagine. Can you imagine?
Do you think that could be a fun idea if we had penalty boxes? And the team would play down. We play 4-4 for a little bit if two guys got in a fight.
I'm just trying to remember, and maybe this is what the refs would say they're doing a great job at. Like, when was the last time you saw something that would have been like a legitimate technical foul 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Like, I don't remember anything. I've seen technicals where somebody does.
It's been a while. You're right. It's been a while since I really saw somebody go after somebody.
Somebody gives the too small thing, or somebody blows a kiss to the crowd. We got to stop that. We can't have any of that. And I just think about how hard those two teams played tonight. And that was high level, tough, physical basketball. And there was never a single moment in that game where there was anything remotely close to anything that could have become a fight. So I think the players are fine. Like, the reason you see it in high school and all these other stuff half the time are students and families. It's not even the players half the time. Players are used to this. We shouldn't be talking about this on this podcast. I don't know why I'm going on about this.
There was
don't be soft.
I did look up SEC basketball brawl. I was hoping to see some examples of brawls in the SEC, but the women's game you talked about is dominating the Google searches. It was the women's Kentucky game. 9 players or 8 players got ejected. Apparently Shaq.
Did they actually fight?
I don't even know.
Or did they cross half court? Did they cross half court and leave the bench, or did they actually fight?
Matt wants to see some real fist fly.
I just think, why do we have to legislate that? Come on.
Shaq and LSU brawled against Tennessee in 1993, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
my high school, Alabama Christian Academy, got into a brawl with Brew Tech in 2005. That was a fun one. That's another Montgomery, Alabama brawl for you. There's got to be one listener on here that's like, yeah, talk more about Montgomery, Alabama brawls.
And everybody goes to that Ron Artest thing, which I was watching that night. That is a once in a lifetime, crazy, super entertaining, person.
Super fun.
And it was at the time. I'm not promoting this. I just think if you go watch these players and you realize how incredibly athletic and gifted they are, it's actually amazing, with as hotly contested as these things are, that none of that ever happens. And again, I'm sure the refs would say, well, that's because we call it so tight and we get involved if there's anything that could go wrong. The coaches are allowed to run around like children all over the court. They're allowed to touch refs. They're allowed to do all this. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's something to talk about. Did you notice how many times Bruce Pearl got like bodied by the referee tonight? It was really interesting. Like sure, we know Bruce gets out there, Bruce gets on the court, Bruce walks around a lot. He's not as bad as Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, but tonight for some reason I really noticed it. The referee kept backing up into Bruce and putting his arm back, like almost doing a box out on Bruce. It was super interesting. I'll have to keep watching that.
Alan Flanagan ran down court and ran into Nate Oates because he was right there. Like
that should be one of those also. The same as going across half court. If a player runs into you while you're on the court, if you end up touching them in any way because you were doing something like that, that's an automatic tech on the coach. I don't want to just another black and white issue, so we don't have to play this game of like, oh, your guy was on the court a little bit, your guy was on the court. If you end up getting touched, that's it. Black and white. That's technical.
That's what it is in other sports, right? I mean, you if you're not on the field, you can't be. So what even happened? If you were telling like a 7-year-old about this big controversial thing that happened in the Auburn Alabama game tonight, what would you tell them?
There was some words exchanged, and there's a very specific rule that you are not allowed to jump off the bench at people. Because as soon as you have people jump off the bench a little bit, it's kind of like a nuclear standoff kind of thing. Like if one bench empties, the other bench empties. It's like baseball. We love a good baseball.
But nothing happens in the baseball fights either.
Oh, those would get crazier than usual. I could watch those all day. The pitcher running out at the hitter and who's gonna pick up who or who's gonna get into it. Oh, those are so much fun.
Now look,
here's another fun one though for you. I'll tell you.
Okay.
You're talking about announcers screaming bloody murder when people are playing patty cakes out there, talking about just the words they use to describe some of these fights. During the Florida game, I can't remember. I guess they were playing Kentucky. I think like a week ago, I was watching live, and they had some fans on the next to the courtside seats. This guy, one of the guys in the Kentucky team, like flies into the stands, runs into him. 3 broy younger guys or whatever. The guy gets up. They're all get up like, oh man, we got jumped on or whatever. And the guy's pointing at where the guy stepped out of bounds or where he thinks he stepped out of bounds. Kentucky guy gets up, starts running. Of course, runs into the guy's arm. You could argue if you're a Kentucky fan, oh, this guy did an arm bar on our player. The Florida guy will argue, I was pointing and the guy ran into my arm. What was I supposed to do? The guy's it's like in real time, it was, snap, super fast. In slow-mo, sure, it looks like an arm bar. Oh my God. The announcers, they should never sit in an SEC basketball stadium ever again in their lives. It's irredeemable. The scumbags on the Florida sideline. I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. And I was like, calm down, guys. Sure, kick them out and do whatever you got to do. Don't act. What words are you going to use when something real happens?
But what elevated that? That was Cal. Cal freaked out and got their attention. And Bruce honestly did the same thing. And now Bruce, I will give him credit. He, in that moment, Alabama's on an 8 or 9-0 run, and he sees guys come across, or his assistants tell him he was mad and he wanted them to know. I don't think I've ever seen that actually called. So I just thought we were going to get free throws out of it. And then I was just really mad when it was confirmed. I can't
believe there was no free throws. I couldn't believe that when we walked down there and our guy Broom was sitting down and theirs was going to shoot free throws when we really needed those points right then.
So it would have been, if it was just out of bounds on Alabama and not a foul on Janai Broom, and they got one technical for each guy, we would have been up 8, shooting 4 free throws and getting the ball. And it went from that to a 6-point lead with 8 minutes to go. That's what happened.
This podcast of all the podcasts has definitely gone off the rails. But to be honest, we are pretty. I think me and Matt kind of have a theory on how we like these podcasts and what we think about how Auburn sports is covered typically, and we don't like to get off subject too much or start goofing around too much. We like to go down. But man, it's been a long season. This was a depressing one. This is the story of the game. We can go down like we usually do and go down some of these players if we want. We could talk some more key stats. I honestly felt like we covered at least the feelings of this game and how frustrated everyone is, how down we feel, the kind of key moments to the game, breaking down the players at this point, especially with how many guys fouled out and Carwell getting injured and things. It feels unhelpful. Like it wouldn't really help the review necessarily. I mean, most we could talk about, it's all really big picture at this point, honestly. There's no one performance or thing that I could break down like especially late in this. Maybe it's part of being late in the season too, where you're like, what? We're going to talk about if this guy's doing this well or not, or how they can prove. It doesn't matter. One game left. They are who they are at this point.
I agree. I would add one thing on the fouls before we forget it. One was a foul. Second foul on Jalen was a joke in the first 3 minutes of the game. He still did a great job in the first half to be able. I thought the coaches did a great job of subbing offense for defense. So Leor and Chris Moore were coming in when there was a dead ball, and they could play defense to try to avoid the third foul for Flan and Jalen. It started out with a weird 4 fouls on Auburn start, and then after that, the refs kind of let it go, and it got really physical. And it was a really hotly contested March basketball game, which is, I think, what everybody wants. And then, so I just want to point out, I don't think Auburn got a bad, there's going to be a lot of talk about the officiating. It wasn't bad most of this game. I thought they kind of were even. They let us get away with some stuff. They let them get away with some stuff. But, man, early we got in foul trouble, and it started early. And then Broom got his second and third were just weird, bad, weak fouls. And then I don't even remember how he got his fourth.
Basically, anytime our centers get fouls around the 3-point line or away from under the basket, it sucks. And about 50% of the time, I totally disagree with that it was a foul at all. I think maybe it's just because they're so big and goofy looking, they get some weird calls out there. I've talked about a million times in this pocket. Macklemore was super bad about that. He would get these little tic-tac fouls, and that was his fault because he kept reaching in as a big man around the 3-point line. Tonight was another one where Broom got some weird calls way out there in the half court 3-point line. He had one where we had 3 or 4. I think he had 3 fouls. Maybe he had 4. No, I think it's 3, where he went and got up on a guy past the half court line. I don't think he picked the ball a little bit. Maybe it went past the half court line. Alabama's on offense, and he stayed up on the guy, and he got a turnover out. He got an offensive foul against the other guy. Great on him. Probably not overall. Don't do that as a big guy. Mm-hmm. Just great. He got the call, but hey, man, half the time, even if it was on the other guy, you're the one getting the foul picked up.
And the other frustrating thing is there was also a few fouls where I'm not even sure it was on Broom. And the weird thing in basketball, they happen so fast that unless sometimes the refs will go back and look and see, oh, was it actually on him or not? But most of the time they don't. And I almost feel like that could have happened once today.
I see the players and coaches a lot of times lobbying the referees for who the foul is going to be on at times. They'll have a big guy and some other smaller guy that picks up less fouls, both going after a guy. And yeah, they'll be like, it was me. Or you'll hear the announcers talk about Bruce is saying that's on Chris Moore, that Chris Moore. I can't imagine they actually listen to that, but maybe they do. I don't know.
They think can go look at it. They don't like to do it, but they can. Anyway, you're right about the overall game. I mean, I think this is such an emotional, tough game for them to lose. It's obvious how much we needed it. Just to give people the big picture, we were 5 spots into the field going into today, according to Joe Lunardi, who's very, very accurate. The good news is this is as good of a loss as you can have for the metrics, which I know people don't like the metrics, but the metrics are our best saving grace at this point. This kind of loss, the way we lost overtime, that all matters. So we're going to keep track on it. I'm hearing more and more people think we need to beat Tennessee to get in. I am one of the few, I think, that I'm not saying I'm going to guarantee it if we lose, and especially if we lose on Thursday in the SEC tournament, the first day we play. But I don't think I feel like if we lose out, it's very much a 50-50, we'll see on Selection Sunday, which is what you want to avoid. I just hate that we haven't picked up a game or two along the way that could have but we're going to have to sweat this one out. And Saturday, I know it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating to use Jackson's word. It's a frustrating season. It's a frustrating team to watch, but this stuff matters. Getting in the tournament matters, and I think you saw it tonight with how our team played. Their backs were against the wall, and they gave a good showing of themselves, just couldn't quite get one more point in regulation to finish it off.
We're just fans. We just have this dinky little podcast that we're glad people listen to, and we've had some cool interviews and things, but this season has been exhausting. This game, I almost was like, if this game was just a blowout, I'd be less exhausted from it. We had this big game against Tennessee, man. So many other years we'd be going on the other way around. If we were getting hot right now, if we had a bad early SEC and we were getting hot right now and we need to beat Tennessee to get in, it'd be exciting and fun. We'd get up for it. It's tough right now. This team is going to have to turn the corner and get up. And Bruce is trying to make history. We got to get that, a huge difference it would make to just make the NCAA tournament in the minds of the national perspective, in the history books and the record books, to just get one more shot, to roll that dice again in the NCAA tournament. You never know what the matchups are going to be. It's March Madness. It gets crazy. The fact that, I'm sure most people in our podcast are listening in from Alabama or Tennessee or wherever. I'm in New York City. People up here don't think about Auburn very often. But if once a year for the next, we have Bruce Pearl right now. This should be our golden years, our platinum years, whatever you want to call them. We need to have people thinking about us when they fill out their March Madness. Doesn't matter what seed we are. Just the fact that people every year are going to have to think about it. I was thinking just the other day about Illinois and how in my head, because when I was like in middle school, Illinois was pretty hot. I think they won a national championship at one point or went to one in like 2005. And then after that, they just had a bunch of years in a row there where they were going a lot. People were picking them to do well. And in my head, they're a great program. I looked up their Wikipedia the other day. It was that one run. They really are not good at sports for the most part. It was just that one little run in like the mid 2000s. But in my head, they will forever be like a good basketball team that maybe is just down right now. We've got to do that to like the kids that are in middle school right now or the kids in elementary school that just every year when they filled up their bracket growing up, we were in it and they had to decide if we were going to win or lose in there. And sometimes they'd pick us to do it. And it's a big deal to just roll that dice again. So we got to win against Tennessee. We got to get hype. I hope people are ready to go. I'm sure the ticket prices, we look those up, are down more than they've ever been.
I'm thinking about going. That's how down they are.
Our friend Jonathan from Red Mount Vodka, Charles Barkley's vodka company, he will be there at what do they call it? The Say Hey. What is the place called?
Food hall. Heyday Market.
Heyday Market. Jonathan will be at the Heyday Market with some free vodka samples. Go check it out. Enjoy the vodka, even if the game doesn't go right. Go enjoy the vodka. Support Charles Barkley out there. Go get a bottle somewhere to drink during March Madness. Even if we don't make it, if we make it or not, you're going to see Chuck a lot. Drink every time you see Chuck on TV. That'd be fun. Do that.
All right, we're getting a little leaning on the podcast here at the end. Yeah, big game. I mean, if you win it, you're in. Tennessee's really good, as much as Jackson hates to admit it.
Ziegler goes out with an ACL tear,
but they kicked Arkansas's tail after that happened. So, and I know Arkansas is kind of a hot topic, whether they're good or not. They're actually very similar to us record-wise. Same record almost. We have a one-game better SEC record than them, but they actually have a better resume. Another unfortunate thing, Vanderbilt, I guess this is good because we don't like Kentucky, but Vanderbilt went to Rupp and won tonight. So now they are clinched being ahead of us in the SEC.
Another one of those games. It's like what could have been, you know, if we were just playing just a little bit better,
we would have controlled our own destiny to get the double bye, Jackson. If we held a 17-point lead, we could have had a double bye in the SEC tournament with a win against
beating Vandy or just beating Georgia.
No, just won tonight. And well, yeah, I know what you're saying, but if we win tonight, we're playing for a double bye next week. It's crazy. I
can't believe Tennessee had Ziegler and Vescovi. Man, we're struggling at point guard over here, and they had two really good ones. We would have loved to play either of those guys on our team right now.
Well, not if you want to run them off, because they're current players and they're not that great. They're not NBA players, but Tennessee's good. We need a win. We don't like Tennessee. We've lost 2 in a row now to them. Don't like it. We could have beaten them in their place again, just like this Alabama game in that ugly 46-43 game. You just hope that the players can keep putting themselves in those spots, but eventually you've got to knock down the door, and that's what makes tonight hurt so bad. It was a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on SEC coming up? It feels like such a downer note. I'd love to turn the corner. I don't know. We have one more game. You pull it off and we make the tournament. Get excited for that. It's tough right now because we've had so many frustrating, aggravating, irritating games this season, but just try to think historically how excited you would be if we had a win in your in situation against Tennessee at home in Neville.
Yeah, look, if you don't value making the tournament, I don't know I don't know. I know for some people it's a newer thing with basketball, and they're haven't been like it's a big deal to make it. And this bubble experience that we're on is actually what most teams in our fighting weight class, around Power 5 conferences deal with every year. Like if you go 9-9 in your conference and you're in a good P5 conference, you're going to be close to the bubble and you're going to be not sure if you get in or not. And I think everybody, no matter what happens, even if we lose to Tennessee, you go to Nashville with a chance to win a game or two, and you probably get in then. But you could also just try to win the SEC tournament. I know that seems crazy, but I haven't seen anything from any team on this conference that says they're way better than us.
Matt, War Eagle.
This is a terrible podcast. Thank you for listening, everybody. I hope this was helpful. I know this was not my best podcast.
It was not mine either. I'm really feeling it right now. I took the mic off the stand and it has changed my hosting abilities quite a lot. I'm on my second drink also, but I've been on my second drink many times there. It's really the mic. You take the mic off the stand and lean back in the chair, and you really feel like you're shooting from the hip.
Just give us some grace. We record this literally 5 minutes after the game.
I have a feeling if you're listening to this one, you've been listening for a while, and we really appreciate you guys. And sorry if it got off kilter a little bit compared to what you were, but I hope we built a little bit of a repertoire or repartee or whatever with our listeners that we try to stay locked in most games.
I think I broke a lot of mold here. Hot takes from me saying that I think part of the reason we lost is because they ejected 2 Alabama players on that sequence. Like, I don't, just let it go. Just let the game go. It was fine. It was going fine. Anyway, War Eagle Jackson, let's hope we have a happy podcast on Saturday.